Her Bak Egyptian Initiate, first day, the last little part. Sage and disciple walked for some time in silence. Leaving the gardens, they took the avenue of the great rams of Ammon. The sunlight was growing fierce. The thick shade of a sycamore tree seemed a good place to stop. After what you have said about Ka, ventured Her Bak, I don't see what there can be left to say about Ba. In the beginning is Ba, said the sage. In the end is Ba. Between beginning and ending, Ba is in everything. It is the breath of life. Ba, spirit, is the breath of everything that constitutes the world and its final perfection. Ka, like Ba, shows three aspects. First, it is the spirit of cosmos, the spirit of fire, quickener of the netters and various parts of the world in which we sense we are to understand the spirits of East, West, Pe, Dep, Neken, Heliopolis. Next is the natural soul in the bodily form of Osirian character, subject to cyclic rebirth. This aspect is symbolized by the ram, with horizontal horns. Lastly, Ba is represented by a bird with a human head. This is the symbol of the human soul, which goes to and fro between heaven and earth to range about the body until purification of the Ka Djet allows the body to incorporate it. This is the bird that is shown perched on Newt's sycamore, at whose feet you are sitting. You must work this out. The sage rose. He took a shady path that brought them to the landing stage, where the boat waited. Her Bak went happily on board and sat in silence at the master's feet, in the shade of a cabin covered with many-coloured matting. The boat went upstream, slowly, to the cadenced rhythm of oars. There is an image of the soul. Ba is represented by the human-headed bird perched on Newt's sycamore tree, before which the deceased is seated drinking from a bowl. A breeze arose and the oarsmen stopped rowing. They hoisted the square sail. The boat heeled over and glided silently southward. It is easier, the master said, to go with the stream than against it towards its source. But this is possible if skilful use is made of the winds, even if they seem contrary. The succession of lives is a stream that sweeps men along without their being conscious of anything but the happy or unhappy incidents of the journey. For each, the course of his life seems the whole of the way. He lets himself be carried along without noticing the current. Very few know how to overcome indolence and observe the nature of stream, wind, and bank. Yet this effort is the nutriment of man's own netter, which incarnates only with this object. Disquiet showed on Her Bak's face. The ideas you give me, he answered the master, who asked what was wrong, are confused in my head like principles without points of application. Who is my own netter? What is it that constitutes the individuality of that which incarnates in me? The answer, Her Bak, should be the last in a course of instruction you haven't had. But there is ground for your anxiety, for the explanations I have given you are summary and introductory statements designed to sweep a pupil's confused thoughts away. If I am to be allowed to complete the course, you must give evidence of the measure of your understanding. Then I'll ask you this, Her Bak swiftly replied. You have spoken about Ak, Ba, Ka. If spirit is the absolute one, how can it be split into parts? The master nodded, satisfied. Your question is shrewd. Now I may approach the reality of the subject. All that exists proceeds from the One. One, becoming conscious of itself, divides and creates the world. In the end, everything that lives will be recalled into this unity by way of the spiritual hierarchies of beings becoming conscious. What name has one? As absolute, it is unknowable, unnameable. As creator of the world, we call it Atum Ra, Amon Ra Ptah. In respect, that is the source of all being, it is Eor. And every man has its image in him, like an inverted reflection. Is this reflection the person? I am speaking not of an effect, but of the cause and principle of what will be personal, and as it were the opposite of impersonal being, the principle of the me, nek, or inek. The word inek doesn't connote a living creature or character. Nek is the thirst for existence in and for itself, without object other than not to be destroyed. It is a transformation of the prime urge to exist into the will to continue, a tendency to the perpetuation of me. The word iu expresses the impersonal principle of being. Inek is its personal seeming. In relation to impersonal iu, inek is, quote, the other, unquote. Iu being the principle of being as primal activity. I limited by a space, W. Its personal aspect is su. For S expresses characteristic specificity. The earthly continuation of a, quote, person, unquote, is given by the word iwa, an air. For A adds the idea of individual dimension to the idea of being. Now, Her Bak, we have a teaching that doesn't allow any waste of words. Think well over your questions. Having reflected at length, Her Bak asked, how can the impersonal become personal? How can the one become the other? I can only speak prudently in the language of our hieroglyphs, the master replied. Our first letter, through its dual aspect, Ie, expresses beginning with its dual potential of active and passive. At once, there arises the possibility of volume signified by Au, the principle of expansion, space substance, dilation, amplitude. The two syllables together, ie and o, speak of being in its original undivided plenitude without categories. What do the sages say about this? In the beginning, Eo lived in one soul body, before there could be duality, before earthly things could exist, when there was as yet no birth, when there were no gods, when the desire of Iku had not yet been spoken. What is Iku? It is the reflection of primal activity in a tendency to personification. Iku is the power that precipitates abstract substance into matter, being into becoming with all its phases and turns of fortune. whence the name of the scarab Kefra, which symbolises these changes. Iku causes the fall into matter, duality, procreation, and the rest. Becoming is universal genesis, the summit and term of which on earth is man. Then follows a supernatural process, a taking possession by man of his spiritual elements, Ba and Ka, which means a new quickening, the birth of a conscious man who has, quote, learned to know, unquote, acquired, quote, higher reason, rek, unquote. This word is exact, for kher is the relation between thing and cause, while rek is the consciousness of it. This new birth is accomplished in spiritual renaissance after death. Her Bak made a point. Master, you say Ba and Ka must be reunited in a man. Being spiritual, they are part of the one from which comes the other. How can the other exist without the one? How can the one be separate from the other that was formed of it? The sage rose. This is too abstract to be resolved at once. There are more concrete matters to be clarified. If you can formulate them, I will answer tomorrow, but remember, when you are trying to state the problem, that its basic elements can never be clarified by the brain, but only by the intelligence of the heart of Osiris in man.